Today, CBN News congressional correspondent Abigail Robertson caught up with Senator Marco Rubio. The Florida Republican gave us his thoughts on the shutdown, the president's authority to declare a national emergency, and new pro-life legislation he's set to introduce this week. And Abigail joins us now from Capitol Hill. Abigail, you spoke with Senator Rubio earlier today. How does he feel about the ongoing government shutdown?
That's right, Jenna. I spoke with Senator Rubio about this government shutdown, and unfortunately, he did not instill much hope that the end is anywhere in sight. Take a look.
Well, the only way you can end something like this is through a negotiation. A negotiation requires two sides to be talking, and it requires compromise. There's not much talking going on, and Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi's made clear that she's not willing to compromise. And I just don't understand, because for years we Republicans have been lectured about needing to compromise, but now that they're offering any compromise on the Democratic side, I don't see the commentators out there lecturing them. And I guess compromise means when 2 or 3 Republicans join Democrats, but not the other way around.
Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Minority Leader Chuck Schumer echoed that same sentiment this afternoon, really saying that there's not really much of a compromise that's being floated, that both of them are willing to agree to reopen the government. They were both blaming the other side for this continued shutdown. And Senator Mitch McConnell said that if the government is not reopened next week, he will cancel the Senate's planned recess.
Abigail, what does Senator Rubio have to say about the president declaring a national emergency to fund the wall?
He says he agrees that there is a national emergency at the southern border, but he thinks that declaring the national emergency to get those border funds would set a dangerous precedent. So he does not want the president to do that. Here's what he had to say on that.
I believe it's an emergency. I would hope he would not do that, and the reason why is because I think it sets a very dangerous precedent. Future presidents could latch on to that and use it to declare their own emergencies for policy aims that we may not be in favor of. The highest standard we hold here is the Constitution, and under that Constitution, our system of government has checks and balances. That sort of executive use of power, I think, exceeds it potentially, and certainly in spirit, if not in law. And I hope he doesn't do it, despite me believing it's an emergency. I think the best way to solve this is for the elected representatives of this people to do what we're supposed to be doing in the federal government, and that is protecting our country by securing our borders and dealing with the humanitarian crisis, which is the biggest issue here. You have families, and a huge increase in families with children trying to unlawfully cross the U.S. border. They are overwhelming our border agents, and it's creating a humanitarian catastrophe. That has to be dealt with.
Senator Rubio also took a jab at the White House and leadership, saying that these funding negotiations should have been brought forth a long time ago, long before the shutdown deadline was approaching, to prevent the government from ever being shut down, and really to have given senators and lawmakers the time to find a compromise before these federal workers were forced to stay home and their paychecks were withheld.
Abigail, in your interview, you also asked Senator Rubio, I know, about pro-life legislation that he's introducing ahead of this week's March for Life. What can you tell us about that?
Well, this week we're seeing a lot of pro-life legislation being introduced in both the House and Senate. The bill that Senator Rubio put forth is really addressing the adults who are taking minors across state lines for the purposes of having an abortion, and these minors who are not their children, and they're taking them across state lines to make sure that the parents do not know that their children are getting abortions. So he's trying to make this illegal. So here's a little more about what he has to say about that.
One I'm sponsoring under my name is Sienna, which is a bill that basically makes it a crime to move a minor across state lines for purposes of abortion unless their parents have been notified. Many states have parental notification laws, and some states do not. And so someone will take a minor. It could be, by the way, in the case of an adult that impregnated a minor and wants to cover it up, they take the minor, drive them across state lines to a state without parental notification requirements, and they have the abortion there, and that would make it a federal crime.
Yeah. Do you think there's any hope you'll see any Democrat support for that?
No, you know, they're pretty locked in and radical on that position, despite they say they're pro-choice, but in this particular case, it goes beyond that. It is the ability of some people to evade state laws. By being able to cross state lines, but they're opposed to anything because they will only do, sadly, whatever Planned Parenthood tells them they're allowed to do.